Alright, so recently Pirate Software actually made a video where he mentioned Lost Ark. It wasn't that long of a video, like it was just a couple minutes of him, I think, just talking about borrowed power in Evergreen systems and how he prefers Evergreen systems. Which borrowed power is a system of power which is temporary, while Evergreen systems are something that stays with you and your character forever. And then eventually, after watching Lost Ark people talk about this topic, I kind of decided that I wanted to dogpile on it as well. And that's because I look at things quite a bit different than my peers. So Evergreen is generally very popular in Korean games and also just really popular in the pay to win type of games. A lot of Lost Ark's design, their boons and banes, really just revolve around a lot of things being Evergreen when you think about it. Even now, going to tier 3 to tier 4, since it is just a soft reset, you're never really losing any of your investment and progression into that character. You're never just completely tossing away whatever you might have put into the character. You don't have to worry about the money or time you're spending on it becoming useless because you're going to eventually have to do this all anyways. That's why people like to say invest, and that's why I said it earlier. Now, accessories have always been the outlier when it comes to Lost Ark because you always do upgrade into accessories when you get different rarities on them, and now you're getting a different type of accessories basically with the Ark passive system. But really beyond that, Lost Ark is a very evergreen game. That's why you don't really see huge fundamental changes to the game on how the progression goes. This is why they only really nerf getting to the power systems, like they only reduce gold costs, they increase chances a little bit. But they'll do whatever they can to avoid just kind of deleting it or removing it. Instead, they'll just nerf it a few times over until people kind of stop complaining about it. Elixirs being that example where they took like 4 nerfs in a row. And really that common topic about a lot of the choices of Lost Ark design being designed to cater around their whales pretty much lines up with the concept of the game being very evergreen. And that Evergreen is a very powerful tool when it comes to a pay to win game, as you do not want your whales to feel like they wasted their money and have them quit. And even outside of money, if you're talking about just the overall time investment that you're putting into it, then you feel like everything you do with the character matters because it's all adding up. In an Evergreen game, you're constantly moving forward. There is no really going back. And I think that alone brings a lot of value to these systems and the game itself and draws in a very particular audience. But we do often see that an Evergreen game can be very intimidating for a lot of new players to try to get into that game. Because instead of seeing this as, hey, there's so much more content for me to do, it's, hey, I got to catch up on all these things and it's feeling like too much. Now, how aggressive that is a game by game scenario, as it really depends on how old the game is and how long these systems have been in place, and just really how many systems there are. Now, historically, you can often see borrowed power being something often associated with expansions, as this is how World of Warcraft was. It really started to be a thing in the Legion expansion and aggressively lasted for the next 3 expansions after that, including BFA and Shadowlands. You could also kind of argue that the Mop Cloak was actually kind of the start of it as well, as it does follow a lot of the same notes that I'll discuss going on. Which, as a reminder here, Legion came out in 2016 and Shadowlands ended in late 22 with the release of Dragonflight. That is 8 years in a row of going one borrowed power to another. I personally played a good amount of Legion, a little bit of BFA, and then I fucked off pretty early in Shadowlands. So what would happen in each one of these expansions, they would give you a new source of power, a new borrowed power that you would use primarily for that expansion. It would make really big effects on how you play. In Legion, we started off with a artifact weapon that you would level up and grind by just doing various different types of content. Along with that, you'd also have legendary items that you'd just get extra perks from. And with these two things, you would get extra skills and just modifications to current skills. And then the next expansion, Battle for Azeroth, they switched it up and they focused around a necklace and armor. And then when it came to Shadowlands, they let you aligned with one of 4 different covenants, and these would give you specific abilities. And these covenant abilities that you would get, they were absolute game changers in terms of balance and kind of how you play the class. So the biggest, most egregious vendor I can think of off the top of my head is basically Convoke the Spirits. If you were a druid and you aligned yourself with the Night Fae, you basically committed war crimes. In the duration of 4 seconds, you would cast 16 different spells at random. To my knowledge, the GDC, the global cooldown of this game, is still 1.5 seconds. Demon Hunters had a skill called the Hunt, which let them basically one-shot or get really close to one-shotting a lot of things. This turned PvP and really Arena to a volatile fucking just kusuge, which is Japanese for shit game. Often used for very unbalanced games that are just really messed up, but people still enjoy. But what I'm getting at is these systems here, they very much changed how you interact with the game. They changed how you played the game. And then when you moved on to the next expansion, all this was gone. The gear you would get in Legion and BFA were just obsolete, and anything that modified how you played would be disabled. While moving on from Shadowlands, you actually got to retain some of these skills. Like they decided to give some of the Covenant skills to classes as a baseline or through talents. I think actually all through talents. As of right now, those previously mentioned abilities, Convoke the Spirits and the Hunt, are both actually in those classes now normally, but they are like severely nerfed. So some pros and cons of Borrowed Power. If you're not really feeling the game, you're not really feeling the expansions, you can just take like a time off until the next expansion. This system and everything in that expansion is not going to be something that you have to worry about come the next expansion. The only thing you're going to have to worry about is just getting to the level cap, and then after that you move on to the next expansion. Which I guess you could also see that as a pro and a con, as you can feel like that all your progress that you're doing towards it doesn't really matter too much to the next expansion or the next update. And overall, it kind of can hurt the design of the content. Content in Legion was designed to use the artifact weapons and have the legendary items and their effects, but when those get disabled later on and people go back to that expansion, they're not going to have the same power level. So it can really hinder the experience of somebody trying to go back through those expansions or somebody experiencing it for the first time. So as you can see, both these systems have a very different mental effect on players. Borrowed Power games generally have hard resets, which makes these games very easy for new players to jump into and play whenever they want. At the same time, they can quit whenever they want and come back whenever they want. With an Evergreen, however, you'd feel like you can't quit, you can't stop, you have to do your dailies, you have to do your weeklies. And then you often see that people are looking into the game outside. They ask if it's a good time to join, when's a good time to join, can I keep up, is it too late to join? And then when they do finally get into the game, they had to see that they had to learn and manage and deal with like 10 different power systems. And I do think it is a bit overloading sometimes for a lot of people. And that's why I think Borrowed Power games generally have a bit more of a growing potential, is because their overall fundamental design of the games that go with these generally fit more towards having newer players join and keep up. With that being said, historically there has been a lot of anger for Borrowed Power systems, and so when Kadia did his reaction to video to Pirate Softwares, he actually said that he blames Asmongold and his community for really this overall hatred for Borrowed Power. I would say that him and his community probably hastened it up and kind of normalized people to talk about it. But remember what I said earlier, Legion through Shadowlands, this was a 8-year-long endeavor. And it kind of got to a point where people are like, oh yay, another system I only keep for this expansion. Oh yay, I get to grind out this system on these characters. And generally they weren't really alt friendly. Like at the start there, especially in Legion, they just weren't. And then in Shadowlands, they made it a lot more alt friendly. But overall, like it was just the same thing repackaged and people just got sick of it. Now the thing is, once people actually got into the game and played it, they actually liked a lot of these abilities and changes that they got from the Borrowed Power. They just didn't really like the grind that they had to do for it. But really what I'm trying to say is, when you have the same thing rebranded for 8 years, people are going to get sick of it. They're going to want something different. So I do think that the WoW community would have eventually gotten to that point. I mean, hell, if we look at Lost Ark right now, we've had Elixirs and Transcendence for what? At this point, 11 months, because it came out in December of 2023. And it didn't really take long for people to be like, I'm about to jump, and like just overall like schizo posting about how much they hate these systems. Now, these are both my two most played MMOs of all time, World of Warcraft and Lost Ark, and it's not even close. And I pretty much disagree with people talking about Elixirs and Transcendence feeling good. Like overall, I don't think these systems have really that much of a redeeming factor. And the reason for that is because I don't run meter, I don't watch my numbers religiously, and that's all these systems do. The only real exception to this, how it affects how you play the game, is going to actually be support elixirs, as they do have slight gameplay changes, but like when you're looking at a DPS, it's just, hey, do I crit more or do I crit harder? And that's really why I started to, in retrospect, start to appreciate Borrowed Power systems, because they gave me something that affected how I played the game. They affected how the game plays. They changed something up and spiced up the game. Like when Tier 4 came out, they added Hyper Awakening and the T skill. That made a lot of changes. It is nice to have that extra skill, and it also is nice to just have the Ultimate Awakening. They're cool things to have, even if I'm not using it all the time. And I just think that having an effect on your gameplay beyond just seeing different numbers, higher numbers, more crit numbers, big yellow numbers, whatever, I think it makes a lot of difference to how people perceive the system. Because going into Shadowlands, it was like, oh, fuck, there's another Borrowed Power system. Great. But then when you're actually just like going out one-shotting people with the hunt, you're just all giggles until somebody one-shots you. Then it's ooh, yikes. And so the point I'm trying to make here is, for me, a power system isn't good or bad just on if it's a Borrowed Power system or a Evergreen system anymore. For me, it ends up being, what does this system do for me? How does it change how I play the game? How does it make the game more exciting for me to play? And overall, these Lost Ark systems, they were designed as a new gold sink to take your eyes off honing for a little bit. The biggest change that they gave in gameplay to the game is they made you spend a lot of time in these mini games. Now for me personally, I don't enjoy the Elixir minigame. I'm pretty sure I said this before, but I do think that the Transcendence minigame could be a fun game if it wasn't tied to your gold. I think that if this was a little game you're playing while you're taking a crap, yeah, wouldn't be that bad. So my TLDR is I don't really care about if a game is borrowed power or evergreen as long as the systems are fun. As long as they affect how you play the game and interact with the game, I think it's a good system. I don't care if a game is evergreen or borrowed power as long as I'm having fun with it. Which is the same thing as the system itself. The system should be fun. And so just like how they added the T-skill and Hyper Awakening to Lost Ark, I hope that with power systems moving forward, they add a little bit more to gameplay like that. Obviously, they can't add like a new skill slot every time, otherwise we're just gonna have skill bloat like we do in World of Warcraft. Or Final Fantasy. I'm pretty sure people in that game still run like a ton of bars because they have a ton of different skills to cast. I think I'd rather see Lost Ark alter skills and gameplay things, because I think a big perk of Lost Ark is really the simplicity of it. Do not really overwhelm people in this regard, at least, because I do think that Lost Ark design is designed around to having a bit of a simplicity around your character, your rotation, how you play the character, and more so focus on how you interact with doing that with the boss. I think the focus on learning and playing the game is going to be more so about the boss and the encounter itself. And that really sums up like borrowed power versus evergreen and how I feel about it. It is all opinion, it is all subjective, there is no right or wrong, it's just, do you enjoy it? Thanks for watching.